Hello, and welcome to Book Circle Presents. I'm Earl Wajenberg. Tonight we are presenting Tales of the Dagda. The Dagda is the king of the Irish fairies, or if you go a little further back into mythology, the king of the Irish gods. I went back into that mythology and into some others, and have come up with some tales of the Dagda. This is the first one, The Good Day. Before the Dagda was king of the Irish fairies, he was a champion of Finvara, who was king before him. The wars with the Fomorians went badly, so Finvara sent the Dagda to find what help he could in other lands. The Dagda knew spells for taking the shape of eagle, stag, bear, and oak, so he took the form of an eagle and flew off. Since he lived in the north and west of the world, he flew south and east to search the rest of it. Now as eagle, now as man, he spied out forests and plains, camps and villages, looking for allies or magic or weapons or knowledge, whatever would help his people. Flying over a forest, he spied shapes running through it. Human-sized creatures were hunting something the same size. Flying lower, he saw it was men and animal shapes chasing a woman. Wanting to understand more, he flew ahead on their path and turned into an oak tree, one more tree in a forest. The hunters surrounded the woman at the very foot of the oak, and the Dagda saw that the hunters were, some of them, men with bronze-tipped spears. Others were wild boars, and some men dropped their spears and turned into boars. One boar crowded in on the woman and prepared to rip her from belly to throat with his tusks. The Dagda felt that the woman boiled with magic, but also saw that she looked frightened. So although it hurt, he used two of his branches to tear off a third and dropped it on the boar. His aim was good, for his own strength was in it, and it struck the boar butt first on the head, killing it, or as good as. The hunters did not draw back as common folk would have done, but cursed and growled and squealed and pushed forward again. So the Dagda became a bear, and roaring, waded in among the boar men, lashing with his claws. One bit his arm, so he bit its neck, and his mouth filled with its blood. In the blood he tasted the changing magic and saw how it went, and so learned the spell. He turned himself into a boar and fought tusk to tusk, pushing the hunters back. Meanwhile, the woman had picked up the oak branch. It smoked where she held it, and she brushed off the twigs, leaving a straight club with a good knob on the end where it had grown from the Dagda's trunk. When the boar men recovered their courage and closed in again, she held the staff out to him and said, "Fight with this." The Dagda became man, took the club, and fought well and bravely, but there were many boar men. When he drove them back for a little space, he said to the woman, "Be ready to ride the stag," and turned into the stag. The woman jumped on his back, and they ran off faster even than angry boars. She steered him by his antlers, and soon they came to a meadowed valley with low, forested mountains all around. In the center, 3 tall stones had been raised up, and in the center of the triangle grew an oak tree, even taller than the Dagda oak, but old and slowly withering. The woman had him stop and get off. "This place is Dodona," she told him. "I live here with my sisters, Lachesis and Atropos. My name is Clotho, and we are the Moirae. We used to do foretellings for Zeus." The Dagda turned back into a man and stood panting after his long chase with a woman on his back. And not just the woman. She handed him the oak club. "Why did you take that?" he asked. "You will not lose it," she said. "It is a good weapon, and it is your own limb." And one antler of the stag was broken off short, the bear was missing a claw, the man had a broken finger, and ever after the boar missed the point off one tusk. He felt the magic in the club mingling with his own life. "Thank you," he said. "That's a costly blessing you put on it, mistress." "It is a fair price. But you've spent strength that will be long in coming back." "No matter. My sister Atropos tells me we will be gone from this world soon. I knew the swine would not kill me, but you saved me from such luck as would have made me eager to leave. Now you have given me cause to regret leaving, yet I thank you. Is that not strange?" The Dagda agreed it was. "But if you foretell, did you not foresee the swine in the forest?" "Everything you foretell is something you cannot change, so you learn to do it sparingly." "And you did this for Zeus? Who is Zeus?" She sighed. Zeus was king of the old gods. He is dead. Many ages back, he and his battled Typhon, the last great monster. They slew Typhon, but not before he tore out the sinews of their strength. They have ailed ever since, the strongest the worst. She sighed again and spoke mostly to herself. The war in Troy and the generation after, that was the last time they could even pretend to health. Then Zeus died, and next Poseidon. Hades lasted long, and we thought maybe his mastery of death saved him, but in the end he died in his sleep. Now all the children of Kronos are dead. The death mark is on the grandchildren too, but not all admit it. Instead, they squabble over succession. Apollo and Heracles both claim the kingship. Ares did, but he has since died in battle. There is one calling himself Zeus the Second, but with no tail to his name, or not yet. Those weir swine are his. And which will win? Clotho smiled as a cloud covered the sun. That is one thing we will not foresee. I would see Athena take the throne, but she is too wise to seek it. She says she will make conquests in other ways. I would wish her well if I dealt in wishes. She turned to him. "Give me your hand," she said, and when he did, she healed his finger, then healed the bite on his arm he had taken as a bear. "What are you called?" she asked. "Darak, oak," he answered, "but I'm also called the Dagda, the good day, because my father says it was a good day when I was born." "Your father sees far or deep. It was a good day for me when you were born, as we saw in the forest. Now I have more to give you." She pointed into the mountains. "Fly that way until you see a battle, and you will have good fortune." "Are you safe here?" "This is my own place for a while yet. I am safe. Go, and make it a good day." He became an eagle and took off. The club was light in his claws. As he flew, the mountains became higher, sharper, barer. After a while, the Dagda heard roaring and yells and saw the battle. Up on a cliff was a fort, small but made of huge stones. At the foot was the enemy host. The Dagda studied them with his eagle sight. Most were men, but some had the heads of boars or wolves, and boars and wolves mingled among them. He saw some shift up on two legs to take up bows and fire at the fort. In the fort he saw men, but mingled among them folk with the heads of wolves and boars and bulls. As he studied the battle, two creatures came flying up from the fort. They were a man and a woman, both young and slender. They carried bows and wore light breastplates and helmets, long hair and wings. He was gold-haired, she dark. "Declare yourself," called the winged man. "I am the Dagda. I was sent here by—" With eagle sight, he saw an arrow lift toward them, pushed high by magic. He twisted in the air and, with the club, batted it aside. "By Clotho of the Moirae, she said I would have good fortune here, but I wonder—" The winged folk laughed. "They fear you are a friend of ours," said the woman. "I'm no friend of theirs now." "They fight for the one who calls himself the new Zeus," said the woman. "I am Kaleno, and this is Calais. We are children of the winds." "We fight for Heracles," the man said. "I begin to dislike this new Zeus," said the Dagda. "May I meet your Heracles? I'm no enemy." "You can at least bring news from outside our siege," said Kaleno, "and that is good. Come down then as a guest and under our hospitality." They went down with him to the fort. Most of the defenders could only shout defiance at the besiegers, and most of them could only shout back. But just as the attackers sometimes shot magically strengthened arrows, so the defenders shot back. They used curious bronze bows and shot only pebbles and small stones, but these flew with deadly force, and the Dagda could feel the magic working in the bows. Among them moved a huge man, simply throwing rocks down at the enemy, but the rocks were big and flew as straight and fast as arrows. "That is Heracles," said Calais. They landed, and the Dagda became a man. He saw a battle fury was on Heracles, so he, like all else, stayed well back. Finally, there were no more loose rocks, and the fury left him. Only then did the children of the winds come forward and introduce the Dagda. He told his story to Heracles. "Will you join our fight?" Heracles asked. He panted and trembled and was pale, and the Dagda thought there was more than weariness from the battle fury on him. "I am on an errand for my own king," the Dagda answered, "and I will pass on if you wish, but I am no friend to your enemies." "You may rest here," said Heracles, "but rest and a drink of water is all we can offer. The siege is starving us." "That is hard," said the Dagda. He looked around at the warriors in their different shapes. "What will happen to them?" "They are mortal," said Heracles. "They will die a bad death and go into the dark with even less surety than they had when Hades ruled it. But maybe the siege will end. Until then, this is what they have." He pulled a lump out of his pouch the size of a man's fist. It looked like crystallized honey. "Ambrosia," he said, "the food of the gods, the last of it. A lick of it will heal wounds or keep a man going all day, and a lick is all I allow." "What do you allow yourself?" asked the Dagda. "Nothing. It is a score of days and more since I ate. I'm not so mortal as to die by starving. I once thought I was immortal, but since my father died, I no longer think so. And you? I do not have Clotho's sight, but I can tell you are not of my family's kind. You are more akin to the nymphs and Curetes." "We call our kind the Shia, and my clan is the Tuatha De Danann. We are immortal. We heal from any wounding, though it costs time and pain." Then he felt ashamed to have boasted before the suffering. But Heracles only said, "I am just the captain here. You should meet our general. She needs to hear your tale. She craves knowledge more than meat." He led the Dagda into the keep of the little fort. It was a single room and held only a great bronze cauldron on a fire without wood. The fire was tended by a man, burly but smaller than Heracles, who walked about the cauldron limping with a cane. He stared curiously at the Dagda, who smelled from him the same tang of magic as drove the bows. "Our weaponsmith, Hephaestus," said Heracles. "He made the cauldron, too, from the shields of the fallen, and set that fire spell in it." Hephaestus nodded to the Dagda. Then a tall woman in gray robes entered. "I am Athena," she told him, and asked to hear his tale. The Dagda told it, and answered all the many questions she asked of him, but his eyes and thought kept running to the cauldron. The sight of it, and his boast, and his pity for the starving warriors were coming together in his mind. "What do you brew in the cauldron?" he asked her when she was done. "My owls have brought in some rabbits and a few herbs. We have a good stream coming down the mountain, too, for water. I will make a bit of stew for our folk." The word stew finished the idea for him. It needed only bravery to complete. "Lady and lords," he said, "I can feed your people, but you must trust me with your ambrosia, and I must trust to my idea. Take the ambrosia lump and break it into 3 pieces. Keep one for yourself as before. Put another in the cauldron. Spare the 3rd part for me. I will turn into a boar. Hew my legs off with a sword and my back and belly, and put them in the cauldron to stew. With the ambrosia, the meat will keep healing and growing for a long time. Give me the 3rd piece so that I can heal quickly. As I said, I could heal even from butchery like that, but it would take long, perhaps generations. I'm on an errand for my people. I should not waste time. And I admit I want this trial behind me soon." Athena, Hephaestus, and Heracles stared at the Dagda, amazed. Then Heracles looked to Athena, who nodded. Plop went a piece of ambrosia into the cauldron. Quickly, while courage lasted, Dagda closed his eyes and turned into a boar. Quickly, Heracles took a sword and butchered the boar. In the pain and the fear and the darkness, the boar felt strong, smooth hands put something sweet in his mouth and heard Athena's voice say, "Turn back." He turned back and was a man and whole again. He looked around. There was blood on the stones at his feet, but a savory smell came out of the cauldron. People began coming in to see where the good smell came from. Athena and her captains smiled. But Athena said, "I hope no one will refuse the meat when they learn the source." The Dagda shrugged. "Do not tell them," he said. "But if they learn, tell them this. I swear by my life and my hope and my power that I claim no hold on anyone through the meat of that cauldron. I give it freely. Tell them that." Then Hephaestus said to Athena, "You should weave him into your plan." And she nodded. She led the Dagda out of the keep and up a narrow stair cut into the rock. It led up to a cliff edge, a stair into the sky. "There is a passage at the top," she told him. "Do you understand me?" "Yes, lady, In my country, we have such passages too, leading to the other worlds, though the entrances lie inside our hills. We guard this one. This is what the siege is about. If I had a good piece of my old power, I would move the passage, then move all of us after it. But I do not. When Zeus died, he left behind a shell or husk of his power, the mantle of his godhood, you could say. So did all the others. So shall I. Are they for Heracles to inherit? The Dagda asked. No. He thought so once, but he feels himself dying too, and he now knows he cannot take on more of their power than he received when Zeus took him up to Olympus. Instead, he has given his help to me. I seek to give out these powers as best I may. This new Zeus is not a proper one for such a gift, but you are. Go up that stair and through the passage. Examine what you find there and take what you think good. But hear these two things. Do not take more than you can handle, or, immortal or not, you may injure yourself in a way that will never heal. And what you see there is a dream and a lie, because such things cannot truly appear. Remember that, but do not think that means the appearances are unimportant or misleading. Everything that is must seem. You're exceedingly generous, lady, but I wish I could borrow some of your wisdom now. You have your own, but you have my blessing for what that is worth. The Dagda went up the stair, found the passage, and stepped through it, vanishing into the sky. He found himself on a stony floor amid mountain peaks, under a deep blue sky without cloud or sun or stars. The floor was ringed with thrones of stone. On most lay sheets of silk in brilliant colors, but torn and ragged at the edges. The largest throne, opposite where the passage entered, was draped in blue. The Dagda went up to it, and since he had been invited to take if he thought good, touched the silk. He caught his breath and laughed. He breathed deep and stood taller. Though he was naked and stained with blood, he felt he was robed in splendor. Though he was fresh from mortal wounds, he felt like dancing. Here was boundless strength and joy, ready for anything. But that was an illusion. Look what had happened to the previous owner. Then the thread cut into his hands, making them bleed. He remembered Athena's warning. If he took more of the blue thread, he decided, he might harm himself, and that forever. Always bleeding, or if not that, forever weak, unable to hold in all the blue thread meant. He tried to put it down, but could not. Instead, the threads sank into his hands out of sight. But the pain and bleeding stopped, and the feel of dancing stayed with him, and was good. For a moment, he had a waking dream. He saw Clotho spinning with a drop spindle. The thread was plain white wool, but she gathered up a handful of fine blue silk and spun it into the plain thread. The Dagda looked around, wondering if he should go. Then another robe on another throne caught his eye, a great sheet of gold. He went up to it and touched it on the ragged hem. He smiled. Here was strength of another kind, steady, unending, except it had ended for the last wearer. It calmed his mind, and in that calm he looked back on the day, on all his journey, on all the centuries of his life so far. Then he felt a steady beat, and knew it for the beat of days and years, and saw how he could command that rhythm, speed it up or slow it down. He might even be able to look ahead on that march and see what was coming. But this time he remembered Clotho's warning about foretelling. He found he had gathered up some of the golden thread, but it was burning his hands. He stopped, but once again what he had gathered sank into his skin. Again he saw Clotho spinning. This time she worked a golden thread into the skein, so now it flashed gold and blue. Motion caught his eye, the first motion he had seen here other than his own. Next to the throne draped in gold stood a smaller, slender throne draped in a silvery robe. It fluttered even though the breeze was slight, reflecting the surroundings like a liquid mirror. Like the blue robe, it made him feel like dancing, but faster, skipping and playful rather than grand. Like the golden robe, it made him see things, but tricks and secrets rather than far visions. He felt there was nothing he could not handle, no problem he could not solve, no obstacle he could not evade. He picked up the threads of silver without even realizing it. They made his hands ache as if there were poison in the gauze. Again he tried to drop it. Again some soaked into his flesh. And again he saw Clotho spinning. Now the thread she spun flashed silver, gold, and blue. He blinked and looked around. What now? There stood a throne of dark stone draped with red. He approached but paused. Could he not find out the quality of this mantle without taking it on forever? He leaned forward and, not touching, sniffed. Heat came up with the odor like the smell of a forge, like hot iron. It excited. He felt there was nothing he could not dare, nothing he could not endure. No, there was no surety of winning, but there was surety of trying. He looked down and saw his hands were reaching out of themselves. He paused again. He thought of the thread Clotho spun, flashing now with blue and gold and liquid silver. Very beautiful, but, he realized, not much of the original plain white still showed. Just a dream, even a daydream. But even these thrones and robes were dreams, or like them, not glamour, but not what they seemed either. Athena had told him these appearances were not unimportant, not misleading. He looked around at the mantles on the other thrones, black and white, green and brown, gray and purple. What manner of folk had left them? The golden thread told him that these mantles were like shadows, shells, molted feathers, the merest edges of their natures. But the scraps and ravelings off 3 of them were all he could take. More would leave him lost in the storming qualities. So, enough. He looked around carefully, found the passage he had come through, and returned. Athena watched him as he came down the stairs. He did not know how he moved, if he danced or marched or skipped. He thought he must look very silly, but he did not care, and Athena nodded. "You chose robes that fit you well," she said. "I did not dare take a whole robe, lady," he said, "just a few strands. Nonetheless, what you picked suits you." He smiled and bowed. The keep was full. The folk had fallen silent when he entered, but now they started talking louder than ever. All were gathered around the cauldron, taking their shares in bowls, mugs, helmets, boots, anything that would hold stew. The Dagda smiled again and walked up to the cauldron. People made way for him. He placed his hands on the hot metal. With the cunning of the silver thread, he rewove the magic in it, adding the generosity and strength of the blue and golden threads. "It will always hold plenty," he told Athena, who had watched him work. "The feast is as immortal as yourself," she said, "and that for a good reason." "How long have I been gone?" he asked. "How goes the siege?" "There is no change of time through the passage," Athena answered. "You have been gone an hour or so, and our foe cannot now win the siege, thanks to you." "Good. Can you?" "Not yet. You have given us time, and maybe I can build up enough power to move that passage." "You must hope," said the Dagda, "that the enemy do not bring help, giants or storm magic or the like." "That is so. I may craft a careful question for the Moirae and send one of the children of the wind with it so as to prepare for their next move." "Does this new Zeus have any flying servants?" "Yes. Sending a message to the Moirae would risk the messenger and weaken our guard in the air." Athena looked at him carefully as if she guessed at the new ideas bubbling in his mind. "How if it was you who got the help?" he asked. "Certainly that would be good. What kind of help?" "How if snow and storm came down from the mountains suddenly and hit only the enemy, not you?" She smiled. "It would be like seeing my father's arm in battle again. If it went on long enough, perhaps I could gather enough power." The Dagda nodded. "You have given me a great gift in return for a pot of stew, even such a pot as that. I don't think we are done trading yet." He took his club and started up the mountainside, not on the stairs, but on the bare rock. He found a place where there was a little patch of soil plunged in the club. As he held it, it grew leaves and branches. One branch grew out and up in a great curve. He broke this off and sat molding it for a while. He brought down a harp strung with gold threads that gleamed blue and silver in places. "Now," he said, and began to play. The notes were high and light, but the melody sounded sly, tricky, as if birds and breezes plotted disaster. Soon enough, clouds rolled over the mountaintop, a storm broke, water loosed the stones, and a landslide charged down on the enemy. but all to the right hand of the fort. Yells and clash of weapons came from below at first, but then foemen could be seen racing away into the woods. If they did not flee, they were lost in the cloud and turmoil. Then the Dagda changed his melody. It was peaceful, almost a lullaby, and repeated over and over. No shouts came from below, and even the dust of the landslide hung in the air like still summer clouds. "Now, lady," said the Dagda as he played, "rest and take something to eat. I am giving you time. You too, captains." "I do not need food," she reminded him, while staring over into the vale, wondering. "Not need," the Dagda admitted, "but you must use some part of your strength to keep that form going. Spare yourself that. Sit, eat, and tell me your troubles to relieve your heart. Everyone else has eaten." Heracles and Hephaestus did not wait, but took bowls, filled them, and sat. But they did not speak, watching Athena instead. And we will hear Athena's story next time.